Let's wind the clock back 2 years. These ideopolitical extremists, not creating but repurposing franchise, would not listen to any fan. And what did they do? They served us, force-fed us incompetent Ghostbusters, Star Wars, Star Trek, and Doctor Who, not because these chameleons of false virtue were trying something edgy and new, but because their fringe ideals and preferred extremist Twitter blue checkmark versions of racism and sexism was held as a higher priority than honoring the legacy and lores that came before them. These socially destructive aberrations, these bigots of mass virtue, these self-important, insanely wealthy ideologues, the bullies of yesteryear, have not a single connection to the geek and nerd cultures for which they have been given the keys to drive what we have loved into the ground. They have no attachment to it, no love for it. They do not care about these properties, legacies, characters, legends, mythos that we, the geeks and nerds of decades past, cherish as the escapism from the bullies' throttling abuse. We were not members of the in-crowd. We were not the popular kids. We were the outcasts, the rebels, the misfits, coming together in comic book shops, playing Dungeons and Dragons, to engage in competitive gaming before it was the cool thing to do. We were the original cosplayers, fandom event organizers, and we did these things not only for the love in our hearts that we had for Doctor Who, Star Trek, or Star Wars, but to respect the creativity of those who imparted their visions to us as escapism from the mundane, to evade the bullies who mocked us for liking the things that we love. Now these false creators, these repurposers, these bullies of yesteryear have taken control of the games, comics, television, and movies that we have loved and supported for decades, some of us for generations. The sole intent for these heartless propagandists is to use what we have adored for most of our lives as a platform to espouse bigotry, segregation, division, and hate. They mock us, use the mainstream, access media, and spineless cuckold shills to weave false narratives about us and once again set to shame us into obscurity from the very escapist entertainments, the very modern mythologies, the very bastions of inclusion that we once called our fandoms. But we have been here before. In older times, we have suffered this type of ostracization and abuse. Were we not once the outcast in times of old, the rebels, the misfits? Out of these dark times in our pop culture, after the obscenity of CBS All Access Star Trek, the mockery of Chris Chinball's Doctor Who, and the complete and utter degradation and disrespect of the single greatest hero in science fantasy, Luke Skywalker, all of these intentionally open insults to everything we have loved for decades, these hateful, crass, disingenuous social justice bigots set about defaming, labeling, attacking if we dare have anything to say about it. They use their weight in the media in an attempt to bludgeon us into capitulation. If there were those who would not kneel to this onslaught of false virtues and fake narratives, these men and women who showed us the way, who stood up and raged against the machine, who put themselves, their professions, their companies, and their families at risk to be our voices in this war for our modern mythologies. Across the ether of disenfranchised fans came voices independently, yet in unison, from Anna that Star Wars girl to President Abu Nas, from world-class bullshitters to Midnight's Edge. Those who have supported and adored these modern myths cried out against the perversion of what we love. And the geeks, gamers, nerds, and comic book enthusiasts came together and formed a new bastion of free thought and expression for what we love. And the Fandom Menace was born. Without respect, we reject. We do not bow to social terrorists. When the industry tells us to like it or leave it, stand up, my brothers and sisters, and shout, "We do not kneel." Hail the Fandom Menace.